Ms. Khalid, respectfully, I don't want to be the Twitter police. So
Chair,
go ahead.
all I want is an apology for putting my safety and security in jeopardy by a member of this committee. That is all I am asking. And I can tell you how much hate I have received on social media. I can read it into the record, how many emails I have received, how many phone calls, people calling me and telling me that I'm a fucking cunt.
This guy's garage. Like and subscribe.
Now in public and in committee business, I have a list of speakers.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Just hang on, Mr. Baines.
I have a question of privilege.
Mr. Baines, I think you'll have to wait until you have the floor. I'm just going to confirm that with the clerk, because I've not dealt with a question of privilege at committee before, so just give me a second, please.
First for everything.
So, Mr. Baines, the question of privilege, having not dealt with this before at committee, I need to determine what the reasons are for the question of privilege and an explanation of such. I cannot determine whether, in fact, there is a question of privilege to be determined. That is up to the Speaker of the House to determine that. Well, Mr. Baines has the floor here.
I can add to it. So I'd like to raise a question of privilege. It's in regards to statements made last week in the committee that I want to respond to some accusations that have been made against me. So the accusations were made in committee.
Just hang on, Michael, please. So
Just a point
it's
of
in
order.
relation, is it a question of privilege or a point of order that you're raising?
A question of privilege.
Okay.
No.
So just bear with me again. Yeah, I'm gonna.
If I may just add before we suspend, if that's okay.
Just let me suspend, because
Chair, hold
to be fair, I have not dealt with this
I just want to help
before.
the clerk out, that's all.
I've not, well, the clerk, I'm sure, doesn't need the help, but I am going to suspend for a few minutes because I want to be better prepared on how to deal with this. And I think it's incumbent upon me as chair to make sure that we do the right thing here, not having experienced this in the past. So I'm going to suspend. Not having dealt with this matter before, I want to make it, I want to be very sure that from a procedural standpoint that we're doing all the correct things. Now, Mr. Baines, when we left, you raised your hand on a question of privilege. I'm going to allow you to state what you believe the question of privilege is. And if you want to go ahead, go ahead.
Thank you. So as I stated, I'm raising the question of privilege with regards to statements made last week in committee, and I wanted to respond to some of the accusations that have been made in the committee, and I'd like for the committee to sort of decide if it should go to the Speaker of the House. So page 57 of the third edition of the House of Commons Procedure and Practice describes parliamentary privilege as the rights and immunities that are deemed necessary for the House of Commons as an institution and its members as representatives of the electorate to fulfill their functions. Page 88 outlines that, quote, members individually have the responsibility to not abuse their rights and immunities, particularly freedom of speech, end quote. On page 112, there's a quote from Speaker Fraser in 1987. Quote, the privileges of a member are violated by any action which might impede him or her in the fulfillment of his or her duties and functions. It is obvious that the unjust damaging of a reputation could constitute such an impediment, end quote. Furthermore, Mr. Chair, on page 619, it states that, quote, remarks which questions a member's integrity, honesty, or character are not in order. A member will be requested to withdraw offense remarks, allegations, or accusations of impropriety directed towards another member, end quote. During our last meeting, Mr. Brock made false claims and allegations of collusion towards me in an effort to intimidate and bully me to impede my work as a member of Parliament. This raises to a prima facie case of intimidation and threat to my reputation. In 2021, I was approached by members of the community and encouraged to run for office, and I'm very honored to be representing the people of Steveston Richmond East. The report indicated clearly that Canada's electoral systems remain sound. That's a quote. And the evidence shows that foreign interference did not impact the integrity of Canada's electoral system in 2019 and 2021. Justice Hogue also said that none of the evidence she's heard to date suggests officials acted in, quote, bad faith, unquote. Yet this is what Mr. Brock accused me of. At the same time, Mr. Chu was actively spreading misinformation, disseminating actual flyers. I never spoke about Mr. Chu, like I mentioned earlier, throughout the whole campaign. I never said his name once. I didn't talk about him. I didn't have to. He actually was handing out flyers saying I was going to legalize hard drugs in Richmond. Neither of these were 2021 LPC platform, and neither are the law of the land today. Rather, it's Mr. Brock and the CPC who have been sitting on their hands while claims of foreign interference run rife in the Conservative Party. And I think I've raised some of these issues before as well. But Mr. Brock doesn't seem to take Mr. O'Toole's recent claims of interference by the government in China contributing to him being ousted as a leader of the Conservative Party. Mr. O'Toole even purports that CBC member and former member of the CPC National Council, Bert Chen, who was suspended from the party's National Council after launching the petition to recall O'Toole as a leader, was involved. It gets worse. More than 100 Iranian Canadians sent a letter to Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre on Tuesday calling for an investigation of the party's handling of allegations.
Mr. Baines.
Point of order, Chair.
Can I just...
Point of order, Chair.
Okay, we're going to go on your point of order, and then I'm going to come back to Mr. Baines, so go ahead.
So in the meandering offering of Mr. Baines, he's talking about things that have actually occurred since the meeting where he claims that the offense against his privilege was taken. So this is.
I believe it's all relevant.
Well, very much, and I'm sure he believes it's relevant. But Chair,
I'm not sure which. Specifically, which point of order he's referring to from the standing orders, Chair.
Relevance is the first thing, Chair.
On a question of privilege, Chair.
Barrett has the floor, Chair.
So, Ms. Khalid, can you hang on, please? Go ahead, Mr. Barrett. I think I've got your point, and I actually got on the microphone almost at the same time that you did.
The Speaker of the House, Chair, has also, in practice, limited the length of time for questions of privilege raised in the chamber, and having done that, the scope that members offering their points has to be very tight, or speakers, the deputy speaker and the assistant deputy speakers have sat members down when they've turned into
I've got that point, Mr. Barrett, and
I'll tighten it up,
Mr. Baines. I was going to make this point that your question of privilege needs to relate to the issue of you feeling like your privilege has been breached. So I'm going to ask you to keep it succinct as it relates to you feeling like your privilege has been breached, not to relitigate or debate what's happened either in the past or in this committee with witnesses. So please go ahead, sir. If you can be succinct and wrap it up, I would appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I will. I'm almost there. So as I indicated, I was just showing a comparison of some of the points that have been raised here, and are chosen to be viewed differently if it's one side of the equation here versus the other. So I just was raising some of those issues as a comparison to really shed light on what takes place here and how I am feeling. So I just feel neither Mr. Brock nor any of the other CPC MPs seem to treat these claims with certainty.
Point of order, Chair.
Go ahead again on your point of order.
Again, with respect to your ruling, Chair, requesting that the member be succinct and speak exactly to how his privileges were breached. What he's offering is opinion on perceptions of members of another party about issues in the news. I fail to see how what I think about something or how I treat something, like, for example, foreign interference, how that has anything to do with his claims that another member of this committee or that his privileges were breached. If he has a specific allegation with
Mr.
respect...
Brock made accusations against me. I'm
Chair?
speaking to that.
I'm not asking for cross discussion here, please.
If the member has something
Wrap it up.
specific that
Yep.
relates to his privilege being breached, he should cite the event, cite the evidence, and then the chair needs to make a ruling. But what this is, Chair, this is gratuitous at best.
So, Mr. Baines, Mr. Barrett does bring up a good point. We are all experienced members of Parliament. We have seen questions of privileges being raised in the House of Commons. In fact, I have raised several questions of privileges in my experience as a House leader. Most of those, many of those, all of those questions of privileges are related to how the privileges of members have been breached. There's very specific references to not just the historical context, but also under the Green Book, how those privileges have been breached. Never have I stood in the House on a question of privilege and litigated what's gone on, either at this committee or what's been the subject of news sources outside of this committee. So I am going to ask you to
I will conclude.
To conclude. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Baines. So Mr. Baines has concluded his discussion.
No. I will give you a
Sorry,
conclusion here.
My misunderstanding. But I'm going to ask you to wrap it up
Yeah,
real quick.
I'll wrap it up.
And if there's another intervention, then by myself, then...
I'll speak to, so I believe I've already made several references to the allegations made by Mr. Brock. So to conclude, Mr. Brock's motion is clearly designed as a personal threat. It's intended to inflict reputational damage, intimidate me using false or unverifiable information, designed to impede me in my role as a member of the House of Commons, making statements against members without evidence or making false allegations is a matter of serious concern for all members, and I look forward to your ruling, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so thank you for raising that question of privilege, Mr. Baines. The chair does take serious, I do see your hand, Mr. Kirk. On the question of privilege, do you have anything to add in relation to this question of privilege? I'm going to remind members that I'm not interested in debate.
On the point of order.
On a point of order. Go ahead, Mr. Kirk.
Sorry, Chair. I am before entering into discussion. I believe that within the framework of privileged discussions at committee, I would ask for clarity from you, and if you need to take time to discuss with the clerk, I respect that absolutely. But on a point of order, just so that we can understand what the framework for which a discussion continuing would or would not look like, and whether we would expect a ruling from you, whether or not there is a motion forthcoming. Noted that Mr. Baines has given up the floor without having moved a motion, and I believe I'm next on the speaking list. So I would just ask for clarity, Chair, on a point of order before we proceed with the question.
Go on the same point of order. Go ahead, Ms. Khalid.
If we can just perhaps have a decision as to whether or not this matter presented to you is a matter of privilege or not, and then you can rule on it at a later time.
Well, herein lies the difficulty. As I explained earlier, I am not sure whether it actually constitutes a matter of privilege. And I think it's unfair of that expectation to be placed on me. When we deal with questions of privilege in the House, oftentimes the Speaker will bring information back, will go back and seek information either by the clerk or the law clerks in determining whether it's a question of privilege or not. So if you're asking me to make a decision today, I think first and foremost, I don't have to make that decision. Secondly, I can go back and consult with the clerk and others on whether in fact I believe this is a question of privilege. If I do believe that, then I come back to the committee, I make that decision, and the committee can move forward in a proper manner. If I decide that it's not a question of privilege, then the committee can move back in a proper format and matter. I am not prepared at this point nor do I believe I have to be prepared to decide on the question of privilege that Mr. Baines has raised. Go ahead, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair, and you are right. You aren't asked to judge whether this is a point of privilege. You're not asked to come back at a later date to determine whether this is a point of privilege. You are, however,
for the purposes
to determine today whether it touches on privilege. That's all the chair's role is whether this touches on privilege.
I think I've already explained myself in that regard. I realize exactly what you're saying is what I realize and what I understand. If I do determine, and I'm not prepared to deal with that today or determine that today, given the seriousness of the nature of what Mr. Baines has brought up, then I can come back and say, in my view, at a later point, whether I do or don't believe this touches on a question of privilege, and then it'll be up to the committee to determine what it wants to do at that point. Let me consult with the clerks, and then I'll come back, and the law clerks, and then I'll come back and make a decision. So that could be by Thursday at the earliest. I'm taking this matter seriously, and I'm going to deal with it in the seriousness in which it's raised. So, okay? Thank you. Hang on a sec. So now that we've dealt with that, I'm just going to remind committee members that we are back on committee business.
Chair, I have another point of order.
Go ahead on your point of order, Ms. Khalid, please.
Thank you. And my point of order refers specifically to Chapter 13 of the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition, on the Standing Order number 18, on Standing Order 116 sub 1. And it is in relation to actions that Mr. Brock on this committee took against me last week in putting out a public statement that put myself in jeopardy, that created a lot of negative angst towards me. And I believe that it violates the standing orders that have been laid out with respect to how parliamentarians are supposed to conduct themselves in the House and in the committee. This is not the first time this has been done, and I would hope that this is the last time that it is done. And I'm more than happy, Chair, to start reading to you.
Ms. Khalid, I'm going to stop you there because I'm not sure whether was it related to committee business?
Indeed it was, Chair. It was very much related to committee business, okay, where Mr. Brock filibustered.
Point of order.
Was it in the meeting itself?
Yes, it
That's
was,
what I have
indeed.
to be clear.
Point of order.
Go ahead on your point of order, Mr. Kirk.
So I believe that it's not a point of order that was raised, but rather, Mr. Chair, I would encourage you to follow the speaking list, because that certainly sounds like a substantive item of debate, and if Ms. Khalid wants to move a motion accordingly,
so Ms. Khalid,
she is welcome to, but Mr. Barrett has
she did bring up a point of order. So on your point of order, Ms. Khalid.
I haven't finished speaking to my point of order, if that's okay.
They have what?
I have not finished speaking to my point of order.
Okay, so
I would like to outline exactly what happened that helped violate the rules that I have pointed out, which is Standing Order number 18, Standing Order 116.
If you feel that way, would you not want to raise a point of privilege then, similar to what Mr. Baines did?
I am raising a point of order because clearly, Chair, you're going to take a while to rule on any points of privilege. Sure. You know what? In that case, I would be more than happy to do a point of privilege in that case then.
Okay. We have another question of privilege being brought up by Ms. Khalid. So if you want to go ahead, Ms. Khalid, on your point of privilege.
Absolutely, Chair. Last week, which was May 21st, I believe, during committee, Mr. Brock put out a tweet that said, disrespect in ethics committee, ! The level of disrespect from Ikra Khalid during committee is beyond words. Her back is literally turned towards committee members. Disgraceful. Now, my understanding of the orders, the standing orders, and the rules for House procedure is that this tweet violates my privilege, Chair, and I will show you exactly how. So I will read to you some of the emails that I have received. I will talk to you about some of the phone
Point of order,
calls
Chair.
that I have received. No, please don't
Point of order,
interrupt
Chair.
my privilege here.
Point of order, Chair.
Just bear with me here. I'm going to suspend for a minute, okay? Thank you. Left off, I appreciate the patience of everyone. We were on Ms. Khalid's question of privilege. I'm going to ask her to continue, but I'm also going to ask, similarly to what I asked of Mr. Baines, I want this, the question of privilege should be as succinct as it needs to be in relation to the privileges of the member being violated. Now, I know, Ms. Khalid, that you mentioned something about a Twitter post from last week that occurred. Okay. I'm going to say this with respect, that I'm not interested in becoming the Twitter police. Okay?
Chair, no. Chair, you know what point?
But let me explain. If you have an issue with the actions of a member that you feel violated your privilege, then I'm asking you to state specifically where that violation occurred. The outside circumstances or the opinions of others does not matter to this committee. What matters is whether a member feels like their privileges have been violated. I'm also going to remind members as well, and I'm reminding you, Ms. Khalid, that anything that happens outside of this committee, whether it's a social media post or otherwise, is a matter that can be taken up by the Speaker of the House of Commons. And we've seen in the past where points of orders or questions of privileges have been raised in the House of Commons, and the Speaker has, in some circumstances, ruled on that. So any form of litigation related to this, any Twitter messages, because look, frankly, I'm going to speak frankly to the committee. I mean, we can go down a very deep rabbit hole on the issue of
Point of order,
Twitter.
Chair. I'm not sure why you're litigating this matter. I would like to speak for what I have experienced based on the actions of committee members.
So explain the actions.
So I am
the point I'm
absolutely
making,
trying to do that, Chair. But
I don't, Ms. Khalid, respectfully, I don't want to be the Twitter police. I don't want to be a determining factor or the determinant of what's appropriate or what's not. We can do that in relation to what a member's action is, but I'm not interested in some numbered Twitter feed of what they're saying.
I'm trying to speak to, Chair. That is exactly what I'm trying to speak to.
So I'm going to allow you to continue with that expectation. So
Chair,
go ahead.
all I want is an apology for putting my safety and security in jeopardy by a member of this committee. That is all I am asking. And I can tell you how much hate I have received on social media. I can read it into the record, how many emails I have received, how many phone calls, people calling me and telling me that I'm a fucking cunt because a member feels that I turned my back to him. And I am just trying to look out for myself, Chair. I am trying to look out for my safety. No, Chair, you have talked over me and over me and over me, and all I am looking for is an apology, and I am looking for a deletion of that tweet. That is all I am asking for, Chair.
So can I ask, why are we utilizing committee time? If you have a problem with what Mr. Brock said,
Chair,
you can approach Mr. Brock.
Respectfully, Chair, I don't believe that is possible. When the actions that are highlighted on social media during committee by members have severe consequences for somebody like myself, I'm sorry, Chair, I am not a terrorist. I am not a cunt. I am not the 100 bazillion things that I get called on a daily basis because my colleagues put me in that position, Chair. Can you please stop cutting me off?
Point of order, Chair.
I am
asking for some decorum.
I am trying very hard, Chair,
Point of order, Chair.
to get my viewpoint across here, to raise a very severe concern.
Just hang on, Michael. I hear your point of order. So, Ms. Khalid, I'm going to ask.
Why am I the only person in this room that keeps getting cut off here,
Point of order, Chair.
I'm not, he's got a point of order. I'm going to go to, I'm going to go to Mr. Barrett on a point of order, similarly to what I do with you when you raise a point of order. Okay? And I'm going to ask, for the sake of the interpretation, that we not cut each other off. Okay? Mr. Barrett, on your point of order, please.
Chair,
Go ahead.
the member is citing correspondence and calls that are not from a member of this committee and that were not solicited or invited by a member of this committee. And Chair,
Mr.
Chair, no,
Mr.
Chair,
Mr.
Chair,
Barrett.
it is,
These calls
I hear your point,
strictly
sir,
from
okay?
so this is
tweet
again
from that
gratuitous.
member
This has
while
nothing to
committee
do.
was still
This has nothing to
occurring.
do
No,
Ms.
Chair,
Khalid,
with my
Ms.
colleague.
Khalid,
This has nothing to
please,
do with my
Mr. Barrett,
Cut him off too, Chair.
I
This
has
am.
nothing
Why is
to
it
do with my
always-
But
colleague.
I can't have
has
screaming
nothing to do with
across the
Michael.
table. I can't have screaming across the
I'm
table
not screaming,
for the
Chair.
sake,
That's a very
for the
gender
sake,
biased statement to make.
well,
Chair,
I
Mr.
can't
Fisher
have
and Ms.
loud
Khalid both
voices.
interrupted me while I was on a point of order.
okay, just hang on a sec, okay? Just hang on with your thoughts there, Mr. Barrett. Okay, so I've heard both points of order. I've heard Ms. Khalid's question of privilege.
Mr. Chair, point of order, you did not hear Ms. Khalid's point of privilege. She did not get to speak to her point of privilege.
I think
she was cut off
okay.
continuously by both the chair and members with points of
I
order.
think she made her point.
She did not get a chance, Mr. Chair, respectfully, to make her point of dangerous incidents directed at that member because of another member in this committee's comments inviting those people.
Okay, so I am
actually
not
didn't happen.
happy with the way this
That
meeting
didn't
is going.
happen.
I am adjourning the meeting. Done.